Hello everybody, this is the last episode of our reaction series in The Enduring Mystery of Jack the Ripper. Today, we're going to react to Suspect 3 and Suspect 4, and I'm gonna start my recording. And there we go. Yeah, it's alright. So, the reason why I'm making this quick, because I only have a limited time because I have a lot to do. I have a lot of things to do, and I'm sorry for my bad English. It's been a while since I recorded, so yeah. Going to start Suspect 3, and last episode we reacted to Chapter 7, Suspect 1, Charles Cross, Suspect 2, Joseph Barnett. First of all, I'm suspicious in Charles Cross because I don't know, he's a little bit of a, I don't know, he's just kind of suspicious for me. And I saw a comment that I don't know what comment was that? In part 2 of our series, the person said that he's suspicious with Charles Cross. So yeah. Okay.
The Whitechapel murders investigation was overseen by numerous high-ranking officers within the Metropolitan Police. One of them was Assistant Commissioner Robert Anderson. Upon his retirement, Anderson repeatedly and unequivocally stated that Jack the Ripper had been identified. There was no doubt whatever as to the identity of the criminal. Without disclosing the name of the suspect, Anderson described him as a, quote, low-class Polish Jew who was, quote, safely caged in an asylum. He'd been identified by a witness who was described as, quote, the only person who ever had a good view of the murderer. This unnamed witness had supposedly refused to testify because the suspect was, quote, a fellow Jew. I am almost tempted to disclose the identity of the murderer, but no public benefit would result from such a course.
Why? I know it's a fellow Jew, but imagine your fellow Jew killed 5 women. You can say prostitutes too because of their job, but I'm just gonna women in a way that is pretty brutal, but weird because the wounds were taken, except for someone. I forgot who that is, but hey.
While Anderson never revealed the name of the suspect, his colleagues were a bit more forthcoming. Chief Inspector Donald Swanson revealed that his surname was Kosminski. Yet another high-ranking officer, Melville McNaughton, described Kosminski as a homicidal and misogynistic resident of Whitechapel. Surviving records show that an Aaron Kosminski was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in 1891. Aaron was indeed from Poland, he was Jewish, and had lived in Whitechapel. He suffered from auditory hallucinations and a paranoid fear of being fed by others. He was trained as a barber, but had, quote, not attempted any kind of work for years. It's unclear when his mental health began to decline, but upon being institutionalized, Aaron was deemed to be harmless. He was, quote, quiet and well-behaved, and, quote, apathetic as a rule. Only on rare occasions would he get, quote, excited and violent. However, before his confinement, Aaron had once threatened his sister with a knife.
Okay.
The case against him largely hinges upon the claims made by Anderson, Swanson, and McNaughton, especially the claim that an unnamed witness identified a suspect named Kosminski. But
not
the descriptions of that
Kosminski.
suspect are not entirely consistent with Aaron Kosminski. For instance, McNaughton stated that the suspect had been, quote, removed to a lunatic asylum about March 1889. Aaron was first confined in 1891.
Okay.
Swanson wrote that the suspect had been, quote, sent to the asylum and died shortly afterwards. Aaron was still alive at the time and spent nearly 3 decades in psychiatric care.
Okay, so that's it. Aaron Kosminski is not Jack the Ripper. Because the evidence is inconsistent. And yeah, my suspicion is not on Aaron Kosminski. My suspicion is in Charles Cross. So, yeah.
As such, it is possible that the suspect Kosminski was someone other than Aaron Kosminski.
Yeah.
It's also possible that these inconsistencies were mere lapses in memory. After all, these events were recounted years or even decades after the fact, and McNaughton even confessed to writing solely from memory.
Remembering an event is hard because you can remember something, but when someone mentioned it, the memory might actually be mixed up. So if you remember something like an event that happened, then you remembered it like, oh, this is what happened, but the person that maybe was with you in the event remembered a different thing that happened. So yeah, memory is very inconsistent, and yeah, it's hard to remember an event this big at this time. What is it? It's 1888. So
Regardless of the suspect's true identity, Anderson was the only one who seemed convinced of his guilt. McNaughton ultimately favored a different suspect and stated that, quote, "Many homicidal maniacs were suspected, but no shadow of proof could be thrown on any one." Inspector Edmund Reed was of the same opinion. "Now we have Sir Robert Anderson saying that Jack the Ripper was a Jew. That I challenge him to prove. I challenge anyone to prove that there was a tittle of evidence against man, woman, or child." So when Anderson wrote that there was, quote, "no doubt whatever as to the identity of the criminal," he merely expressed his personal opinion. There was in fact ample doubt and no consensus amongst the police. But in recent years, Aaron Kosminski has been resurrected as a prime suspect due to a controversial DNA analysis. Okay, so back in 1888, Acting Sergeant Amos Simpson is said to have stolen a blood-stained shawl from the crime scene of Catherine Eddowes. This shawl was then passed down from one generation to the next before being submitted for DNA testing in 2011. DNA samples were extracted from the shawl and then compared against maternal descendants of Eddowes and Kosminski. In both cases, it was a match. If the subsequent news coverage is to be believed, the mystery has now been, quote, definitively solved. Aaron Kosminski was Jack the Ripper. But as you can imagine, it's never quite that simple. First of all, the provenance or chain of custody of the shawl is severely lacking. There is no evidence of a shawl being found at the crime scene, nor is there any evidence of Simpson ever being at the crime scene. Furthermore, a destitute woman like Eddowes is unlikely to have owned such an expensive item. Second of all, the type of DNA used to identify Eddowes and Kosminski was mitochondrial DNA, the powerhouse of the cell. This type of DNA is passed down through the female line and is not unique to any one individual. Thousands can share the same mitochondrial DNA, which means it can't be used to pinpoint a specific person. In the words of a geneticist, based on mitochondrial DNA, one can only exclude a suspect.
That's a fact.
So to say that the mystery has been definitively solved is widely inaccurate. There's still plenty of room for doubt. So to recap, a suspect named Kosminski was identified by an unknown witness. This was enough to convince at least one senior officer of his guilt. That suspect may have been Aaron Kosminski, a man who was largely non-violent but once threatened his sister with a knife.
So
Aaron can neither be incriminated nor eliminated by the DNA evidence.
So he just threatened his sister, but do we have any evidence that he's violent, that he hurt someone? Yeah, he threatened his sister, but no, it's just a threat. And for him killing 5 women, nah, I doubt it.
He spent the rest of his life in psychiatric care and died in 1919 at the age of 53.
Yeah, evidence inconsistent.
Kosminski was not the only suspect advanced by a high-ranking officer. A completely different suspect who still falls into the same category is Francis Tumblety.
Tumblety. Okay.
Two days before the murder of Mary Jane Kelly, an American physician named Francis Tumblety was arrested in London. As you can probably tell from this photograph, Tumblety was quite an eccentric character. He was born in Ireland around 1833, but was raised in the United States.
So, he might actually be, his family might actually be part of the mass of immigrants that immigrated to the US because of the potato famine that happened in Ireland. And I saw a video about that, and I want to react to it because I saw some parts of it, and yeah, I don't know. I'm just guessing if maybe he's the part, because knowing that a potato famine happened and him being raised in the United States, he might actually be part of mass of Irish immigrants that emigrated to the US because of the potato famine. So, yeah.
From an early age, Tumblety gained a reputation for being a medicaster or quack doctor. He engaged in all sorts of medically dubious practices and advertised himself as the Indian herb doctor.
Okay.
He promised to cure anything from dyspepsia and scurvy to cancer and blindness using nothing but medicinal herbs.
Wow.
When he was not posing as a doctor, Tumblety was busy running from the law. He was either accused or convicted for crimes like theft and assault, attempt to induce a miscarriage, and manslaughter of a patient. He was even implicated in the assassination of US President Abraham Lincoln, but was ultimately cleared of suspicion.
Okay. But, okay, so he has a reputation. Okay.
Now, in the early 1860s, Tumblety is alleged to have hosted a lavish dinner party in Washington.
Okay.
Only men were invited to this dinner, and Tumblety had supposedly expressed fierce hatred of women. Furthermore, he showcased a cabinet in his office in which he stored a vast collection of jars filled with anatomical specimens.
What?
Some of which were said to contain the wombs of, quote, every class of woman. In 1869, Tumblety ventured across the Atlantic and visited England for the first time. By his own admission, he roamed the streets of London until he became familiar with every part of it. He advertised himself as the Great American Doctor and had a few skirmishes with the police.
Okay.
After a few more voyages between the old world and the new, Tumblety found himself in London in the autumn of 1888. The purpose of his visit and whereabouts at the time of the murders are completely unknown. Tumblety never stayed in one place for long and made frequent use of false names.
Oh.
There is a story of a mysterious lodger leaving behind a blood-stained shirt near the murder site of Elizabeth Stride. This supposedly happened on the night of the murder, and some believe that this lodger was Francis Tumblety. But there is no firm evidence of that, and the entire incident is fraught with uncertainty. What we do know is that Tumblety was arrested in London on November the 7th.
Oh, okay.
According to the press, as well as Tumblety himself, he was arrested on suspicion of being Jack the Ripper.
Oh, okay.
2 days later, Mary Jane Kelly was found brutally murdered, and it's unclear whether Tumblety was still in custody or had already been released on bail.
Okay.
Nevertheless, he was ultimately charged with 4 counts of gross indecency, which had nothing to do with the murders. But Tumblety had no intention of standing trial. Instead, he made his way across the English Channel, boarded a steamship under a false name, and fled back to America. He was pursued by detectives and kept under surveillance, but his offenses were, quote, not extraditable. As such, Tumblety remained in the United States and never returned to England. So to recap, Francis Tumblety was a misogynistic medicaster who was in London at the time of the murders. He even showcased a collection of wombs, and the Ripper did indeed extract the womb from 2 of his victims.
Oh.
I mean, he sounds like the perfect suspect.
But too perfect.
Perhaps a bit too perfect.
Okay.
There is no doubt that Tomlety was in London in 1888, but the claim that he was a misogynistic collector of human body parts is extremely dubious.
Okay.
It can be traced back to a single article from December of 1888, featuring an interview with a man named Charles Dunham. Dunham had a long history of spreading misinformation and has been described as a pathological liar, a forger, and a conman. He was even convicted of perjury. As such, there is every reason to believe that this story is a complete fabrication.
So, okay. So that means the story about Francis Tomlety hosting a dinner and showing his collection of anatomical maybe wounds to the men that he invited, it's fake, maybe, but might actually be fake. Yeah, because knowing that the person that was publishing the papers has a reputation of being a liar, and yeah, okay, that's not gonna help us. And yeah, I was very suspicious of Francis Tomlety, but now, nah, I'm suspicious of Charles Cross though.
Furthermore, Tomlety was both older and taller than the men described by most witnesses.
Oh.
Tomlety was said to be, quote, an enormous man who liked to dress in
6'2".
flamboyant and militaristic outfits. It's difficult to imagine a tall, pompous American sneaking around the streets of Whitechapel virtually undetected.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's unclear which, if any, of the witness accounts can be trusted. Then there's the matter of the rings. You may recall that two brass rings were stolen from the body of Annie Chapman. It's suspected that the rings were taken by the Ripper to be kept as trophies. Now, upon his death in 1903, Tomlety left behind a quite impressive estate. But among his many valuable possessions were a pair of inexpensive imitation rings. Could they have been the same rings taken from the body of Chapman? It's possible. It's also impossible to prove. Chief Inspector John Littlechild regarded Tomlety as a, quote, very likely suspect. And it's not difficult to see why. If the many rumors about him are to be believed, Tomlety had both opportunity and motive to commit the murders. But therein lies the problem. Much of what we know about Tomlety is founded upon unsubstantiated rumors. Tomlety himself was an attention-seeking charlatan with no qualms about lies and deception.
Okay.
With a suspect like that, one can never be certain where the lies end and the truth begins.
Yeah. My goodness. For Mr. Dunham, I don't know. Francis Tomlety, he might not actually be Jack the Ripper, because the stories might actually be just made up by Dunham so that he can, I don't know, you get money for that, so yeah, you get paid more to, I don't know how to be like a newspaper publisher, but hey, it's that is not helping the case. And yeah, but I'm still suspicious with Charles Cross though.
To theorize about the identity of Jack the Ripper is to navigate a minefield of hearsay, sophistry, and contradictions.
Yeah,
entire encyclopedias have been dedicated to the compilation of suspects, and with every passing year, they seem to grow ever more expansive. Even though there are hundreds of potential suspects, only a dozen or so are worth more than a brief consideration. Some of the more sensational contenders include famous authors and artists, as well as high-ranking officers and members of the royal family.
Why?
But these grand conspiracies and elaborate deceptions seem hopelessly contrived against the sheer simplicity of a suspect like Charles LEMMiNO, an unassuming delivery man on his way to work. Personally, I remain unconvinced that Jack the Ripper has even been identified as a suspect. The few covered in this video are probable candidates, but it's still possible to make persuasive arguments against them. The same is true of all those left out by necessity. None of them can offer anything more than ambiguity and circumstance.
That does make sense.
With a suspect pool in the hundreds, that might seem improbable. But London was the largest city in the world, home to the largest port in the world.
The English flag.
It was a city of millions, with a large population of poorly documented drifters.
Oh god.
It's not difficult to imagine one lowly sailor, butcher, medic, soldier, barber, merchant, porter, clerk, blending into the slums of Whitechapel like a grain of sand.
My god. 100 suspects. I'm sorry. I gotta stop it there. Okay, so wow, we're done. We're freaking done, guys. Wow. The enduring mystery of Jack the Ripper. That is amazing. That is freaking amazing. Wow. That was an amazing mystery, and it's an amazing history too. History and mystery. So yeah, wow guys, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and yeah, you might actually try to, you know, just stop watching LEMMiNO for a while, because if we kept on watching more LEMMiNO, it's copyrighted. So yeah, thank you for watching, everybody. Like and subscribe. This is fun. It was fun. The journey was fun. We straight up reacted to 8. Wow, I'm in my channel right here, and we had 8 episodes. This is the part 8. I posted part 1 to 7 straight. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. After that, I'm gonna post episode 8, and yeah, wow. And after this, we may actually go react to the Pacific War. We're going to continue our series in the Pacific War, because it's been a month since we reacted to Kings and Generals, and after that, we may actually start a new series, because I found a lot of videos that I wanted to make a video about, and I want to learn. So if you want to learn with me, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I'm actually change my banner, because I'm not a gamer anymore, and I'm a history channel now. So yeah, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Appreciate all of you for being with me in this huge journey reacting to the enduring mystery of Jack the Ripper. Thank you very much.